You are listening to the Rooted Path Global Podcast. This is the podcast for faith leaders, community developers, funders, and field practitioners who believe that formation must come before mission. The Rooted Path is a 9-step congregational formation framework built on one conviction. What is formed is what gets scaled. Beneath the framework sits clear path intelligence, the technology layer designed to hold what formation reveals long enough for it to mature into infrastructure. Because the field has had theology, it has had methodology. What it has never had is a system to hold its memory. The companion book is now available on Amazon. Divine Assets, Faith-Based Leadership for a Global Movement. This is not a program. This is not a curriculum. This is the operating system the field has been missing. Formation before mission. Let us begin.
Welcome to the Rooted Path Reflection Series. Today we are sitting with The Infrastructure Beneath Formation, written by Damian Curd. After this, we will refer to him simply as Damian.
Thank you. It's really good to be here for this one.
Yeah, and to jump right in, this essay names a structural problem the field of faith-based community development has not yet fully named, which is that the field has produced transformation faster than it has produced infrastructure capable of preserving transformation across time.
Right.
And Damian's argument is that this is not a motivational problem, it is structural. And crucially, it is solvable.
Exactly. I mean, we really need to ground this conversation immediately because this is a word for the congregation that has experienced real formation work and watched it dissolve when the facilitator left a room.
Yes.
What we were discussing today is not, some theoretical exercise.
Yeah.
It is a lived reality for almost anyone doing this work on the ground.
Absolutely. So, let's paint the picture for the listener. Imagine you just spent thousands of dollars.
Right.
You gathered your entire community for an exhausting, emotional 3-day retreat.
Which is a huge lift.
A massive lift. And you finally experience this breakthrough where everyone is on the same page. And then you effectively toss all of that progress into a paper shredder on Monday morning.
Yeah, that is exactly what is happening in congregations across the country right now.
You feel the breakthrough in the room, and the second the routine sets back in, the magic just vanishes.
It is incredibly disheartening. But, as Damian points out, it is not because the people in those rooms lacked dedication.
Right.
It's not because their theology was flawed or because they just didn't, care enough. The problem is structural. And because it is structural, we can actually build a solution.
Which is the good news here.
It is. This deep dive is really for the communities that are ready to look in the mirror and move beyond that fleeting inspiration of a weekend retreat to actually build the architecture of their future.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to look at the exact moment where that transformation typically peaks and then heartbreakingly just falls apart.
The sticky note phase.
Yes, Damian starts with the classic asset mapping workshop. Now, for you listening, if you might be new to this specific term, what is asset mapping in plain English?
Essentially, it's an inventory. But instead of taking an inventory of chairs and hymnals and bank accounts, you are taking an inventory of human capacity.
Ah, okay.
So a facilitator usually stands at the front of a room with a giant blank wall, right? And stacks of sticky notes and markers. And the congregation is asked to write down their gifts, their skills, their networks, their passions.
Right. And there's a very specific energy in that room when this happens. I mean, I've been in these workshops.
Me too.
It gets quiet in a really profound way at first. People are thinking, and then suddenly it gets loud. People are moving around, slapping sticky notes on the wall, laughing, connecting.
It's electric. But what's fascinating here is that we cannot view that exercise as just a standard corporate brainstorming session.
How so?
Well, when you are doing this in a faith-based community, what is happening in that room is actually a theological act.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Damian describes this scenario with a 60-year-old church member who has never spoken up. She has never claimed to have a specific gift in her 40 years of sitting in those pews.
Right.
When she finally writes down a gift on a sticky note and places it on that wall, it is not just team building. It is an act of profound sacrifice.
Because she's making herself vulnerable.
Exactly. She is placing before her community something she was not required to give, and that builds a spirit of recognition that individuals simply cannot generate in isolation.
They need the container of that room.
Right. They need the physical and spiritual space of that room to make those invisible gifts visible.
It's this beautiful moment where the community is learning to see itself through a lens of abundance rather than through its wounds or its deficits. But then, and this is the heartbreak, the sticky notes came down.
The sticky notes came down.
Let's just let that sit for a second. The workshop ends. The facilitator packs up their bag. People drive home.
And within weeks, or maybe months, the organization operates as if that room never happened.
It's like it evaporates.
Totally. The institutional memory of what that community discovered about itself, all those gifts, all that potential, it just dissolves into the ordinary, exhausting pressures of congregational life.
It's like the spiritual equivalent of a New Year's resolution.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Everyone is highly motivated in the gym on January 2nd, and by February, the treadmill is just an expensive coat rack.
Right.
And Damian diagnoses this perfectly. The field has produced transformation faster than it has produced infrastructure capable of preserving transformation across time.
Which is the core thesis here. Those sticky notes were brilliant for discovery, but they were never designed to be a storage mechanism.
Right. They were designed to spark the fire, not maintain it. So is this essentially like experiencing a spiritual sugar rush instead of building a balanced diet?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, I would actually refine that analogy a bit.
Okay, lay it on me.
It is not that the experience was a sugar rush. The substance of what was discovered on those sticky notes was deeply nutritious. The fruit was real.
Okay.
The problem is the lack of a container. If you harvest a field of real, beautiful fruit, but you have no basket to hold it, the fruit simply rots on the ground. The field has mastered the harvest, but it has completely neglected to build the basket.
Which begs the question, right? If the fruit of this labor is so real and so nutritious, why is it so rare to see this actually spread?
Right.
Like if a church does something amazing, why does replication usually fail? This brings us to what Damian calls the downstream trap.
Yeah, and this requires us to look at the mechanics of how we fund emotion versus how we fund memory.
Okay, what does that mean?
Let's say a congregation does the hard formation work. They build the trust, they map their gifts, and they succeed in creating something tangible, like a neighborhood food system or an affordable housing development.
A huge win.
Huge win. But that resulting fruit creates what we call institutional gravity. It consumes all the time and energy of the very people who are formed by the process.
So they are too busy running the food bank to reflect on how they built the food bank in the first place.
Precisely. And then the funders, the denominations, and the intermediaries, those middleman organizations that help funnel resources and guidance to local churches, they visit this celebrated congregation.
Right, looking for the secret sauce.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they don't look at the roots. They ask for the downstream artifacts.
Just to clarify for the listener, by downstream artifacts, you mean the tangible outputs, right? Like they want the service delivery model. They want the dashboard numbers.
Yes, the things that are easy to put in a PowerPoint presentation.
Right. They aren't asking for the upstream formation architecture.
No, they aren't asking about the 3 years of building trust or the slow, sometimes painful discernment process that allowed the community to recognize what they were even capable of building.
And this creates a severe evaluation problem. I mean, think about how wild the grant process actually is.
It's incredibly flawed.
Grants tend to pull this multi-year, deeply relational work into compressed, 6-month reporting cycles?
Usually, yeah. Q1, Q2, Q3.
You're asking a community to build deep human trust and show measurable, flashy impact by Q3. Why do funders default to this?
Well, because philanthropy and grant making often operate on a corporate mindset. There is pressure for a quick return on investment.
Right, they want visibility.
They want visibility. They want launch metrics.
Yeah.
But human trust does not operate on a fiscal quarter timeline.
No, it definitely doesn't.
When you force a community to produce downstream results before they have built upstream trust, you actually fracture the community. The field simply does not fund institutional memory. It does not fund the arduous labor of documentation.
Which leads to one of the most important lines in this entire essay.
Go ahead.
You cannot replicate someone else's success. You can only replicate a process capable of discovering your own.
That is the pivotal realization of this entire deep dive. You cannot replicate someone else's success.
It makes total sense when you say it out loud. You
Yeah.
can't just take the blueprint of a desert succulent and plant it in a swamp, expecting it to thrive.
No.
A megachurch's food program in the suburbs is built for their specific soil. You have to figure out what grows in yours.
And the people running that successful suburban food program don't have the reflective distance or the time to write down the vocabulary of how their trust was built anyway.
Right.
Witnessing transformation and documenting transformation are two completely different skill sets.
Yeah.
The formation worked, it just didn't write itself down.
And this is exactly why Damian is calling for real, tangible infrastructure to step into this gap. We are not just talking about theories here.
No, this is highly practical.
We are talking about the infrastructure being built by Kingdom Assets, LLC, and specific tools like the Rooted Path, ClearPath Intelligence, and Giftscape. These are not placeholders or, abstract ideas. This is the actual architecture being called into existence to solve that container problem we talked about.
And the critical feature of these tools is their adaptability. Transferability without cultural adaptation is just another form of the wrong transfer.
That's a great point.
Any infrastructure we build must be walkable by any community. It cannot demand that a neighborhood church mimic the cultural context of the celebrated congregation they're learning from.
Okay, so we have these tools, but you can't just hand a church a software login or a new workbook and say, good luck, figure it out.
Definitely not.
Before a congregation can even use this new infrastructure, they have to know what kind of baggage they're bringing into the room.
This is where we must be incredibly careful. This new infrastructure from Kingdom Assets LLC is not just an upgraded version of asset mapping.
It's not just digital sticky notes.
No, not at all. It requires a diagnostic entry point, specifically congregational onboarding assessment. If a community skips this pre-phase assessment, they're guaranteed to repeat the failure pattern of discovery without infrastructure.
So let's talk about what that diagnostic assessment is actually looking for. Damian names 3 pre-formation conditions, and we need to treat these with heavy diagnostic weight.
Yes, these are vital.
These aren't just labels, these are realities that can make or break a community. The first one is privilege concealment.
Right.
Now, I have to push back here for a second. In any other sector, having a massive endowment, highly educated members, and a polished 5-year strategic plan is the ultimate goal.
Of course.
So why wouldn't a well-funded, highly strategic church be ready for this? How could having too many resources be a disadvantage?
Because communities with excess resources are explicitly trained to see credentials and strategic plans instead of actual human gifts.
So interesting.
If you have a massive endowment, the sticky note wall feels entirely unnecessary to you. You think, we have a 5-year plan drawn up by a consulting firm. Why do we need to ask the congregation what their gifts are? We already know what we have money.
So they are functioning like a corporation rather than a deeply formed body.
Exactly. Privilege does not eliminate the need for formation. It conceals it.
Wow. Privilege does not eliminate the need for formation, it conceals it.
It masks the fact that the community might be relationally hollow. The assessment brings that to light, so they realize they actually need the formation process just as much as anyone else.
Okay, so having too much money and polish can blind a community. But what about the opposite end of the spectrum?
The second condition.
Right. What happens when a congregation has been actively hurt or marginalized? That brings us to the second condition, trauma fragmentation.
This raises an important question, and it is perhaps the most delicate condition to diagnose. Trust architecture cannot be built in a room where trust has been systematically destroyed.
Right.
Imagine a neighborhood that has been historically marginalized, where outside researchers or institutions have come in, extracted data or labor, and then just abandoned them.
Sadly common.
Or imagine a congregation that has been deeply hurt by previous toxic leadership. They have learned a very harsh lesson. Named gifts get extracted, or they get ignored.
So how does that actually manifest in the room during a workshop?
It looks like silence.
Really?
Yeah, it looks like crossed arms. It looks like a room full of people refusing to write anything on a sticky note because it has become a matter of self-preservation to keep their gifts hidden. Trauma fragments the relational capacity that formation depends on.
That is so powerful. Trauma fragments the relational capacity that formation depends on.
It really does.
If you ask a traumatized community to just start naming their gifts with, forced cheerfulness without doing the repair work first, you aren't helping them. You were just undermining everything that followed.
Which is why the onboarding assessment is mandatory. It identifies this trauma so the community can slow down and heal before they are asked to produce anything.
That makes perfect sense. The third condition Damian names is scaffolding loss. And this one feels incredibly relevant to so many congregations right now, especially post-pandemic.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the community that lost a long-tenured pastor or a founding generation or maybe a major funding relationship that held everything together.
When those communities enter a formation process, they are not starting from zero. They are starting from a profound sense of grief.
Yeah.
The scaffolding that used to hold them up is gone, and that absence is actually a very heavy presence in the room.
But grief in an organizational setting doesn't always look like people crying in the pews.
Yeah.
What does it actually look like when they try to move forward?
It looks like a board member aggressively shooting down every single new idea the new pastor brings up.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Subconsciously, any change feels like erasing the legacy of the person they lost. If a facilitator comes in and ignores that loss, the congregation will push back hard. Grief that is not named becomes resistance that looks like disengagement.
Let me repeat that because it is so crucial. Grief that is not named becomes resistance that looks like disengagement.
It's profound.
That explains so many failed organizational retreats right there. People aren't disengaged because they don't care. They are resisting because they are grieving and no one has acknowledged it.
Exactly. If you don't diagnose the privilege, the trauma, or the grief, your infrastructure is being built on a fractured foundation.
So let's say a congregation does the assessment. They look in the mirror, they do the pre-work, they heal the trauma, they name the grief, they strip away the corporate privilege.
They're ready.
How does this new infrastructure actually operate differently than the old models we've been using for decades?
It requires completely dismantling a false binary. Historically, the field has treated formation, the relationship building, the trust, the sticky notes, as the early soft stuff.
Right.
And they treat operations, the budgets, the strategic planning, the concrete results as the late hard stuff.
Right. You do the circle time sharing first, and then you put all that away and get to the real work of spreadsheets and building permits.
And that is a fatal misreading of how human organizations actually work. Formation is not a phase. It is the load-bearing current running through every step of the sequence.
Okay.
The downstream fruit, the housing project, the food bank, that is not separate from formation. That is formation made visible in the world.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me, because I think of it like pouring concrete for a skyscraper.
Go on.
You don't just put steel rebar in the basement foundation and then say, okay, we're done with the structural integrity part and build the next 10 floors out of pure glass and hope it holds.
Right, that would be a disaster.
The rebar has to run up through every single floor. The tension of the steel is what allows the concrete to hold the weight.
That's a perfect analogy. The relational formation is the rebar.
Right. If formation is the rebar, it has to run through the strategic planning, the budgeting, the execution. It hoards the weight of the entire structure. If you stop forming the people, the project collapses under its own weight.
And because that rebar runs all the way to the top, the sequence doesn't just end when the building is finished. The final step in this infrastructure is not a conclusion, it is a recycle point.
Break that down for me. What does a recycle point mean for a church in practice?
It means the congregation becomes a living, learning ecosystem. When new members join, they aren't just handed a volunteer schedule to go stack chairs.
Right.
They are received into a formation culture that already exists. Institutional memory is preserved. The community is now capable of starting the entire sequence over again, but this time from a much higher level of institutional maturity.
Wow.
They aren't starting from scratch every 3 years when the board changes. The system compounds on itself.
So what happens if we actually get this right? If this systemic shift takes hold and we start using tools like the rooted path and clear path intelligence, how does the broader landscape of community development change?
Well, if the field begins requesting formation infrastructure instead of downstream programs alone, the response will change.
It shifts the demand.
It shifts the entire ecosystem. Foundations could actually pilot funding streams for documentation labor, paying people to write down how they built trust.
Which would be revolutionary.
Denominations could restructure their coaching to focus on continuity across pastoral transitions, treating institutional memory as a metric of congregational health rather than just looking at weekly attendance.
And those intermediaries we talked about earlier, the middleman organizations, they become stewards of cross-congregational memory.
Yes.
They hold the field insight that individual local churches just don't have the bandwidth to hold alone across decades.
Exactly. But we must also emphasize a point of humility here. Damian is not claiming to have built a monopoly with Kingdom Assets LLC. The field will likely require multiple interoperable approaches rather than one dominant model. A field with several serious attempts at formation infrastructure is far stronger and far more resilient than a field relying on a single silver bullet.
Which brings us to the invitation. And we want to speak very directly to you, the listener, right now.
Yes, please listen closely to this part.
This essay and this deep dive is not a theoretical exercise. It is not just a nice thought experiment. It is a genuine, serious opening for pilot congregations.
It is.
If your congregation is willing to look in the mirror, to walk the sequence, and to contribute what only actual lived field practice can provide, this is for you.
The field does not need to choose between formation and infrastructure. It needs infrastructure capable of preserving formation.
Yes.
It is an invitation to do the hard, necessary work of ensuring that what you discover about your community actually survives the fatigue of tomorrow.
If your congregation is ready for this, if you are tired of the sticky notes coming down and the momentum fading, we strongly encourage you to visit the website.
Highly recommend it.
Go to rootedpathglobal.com. That is rootedpathglobal.com.
And as we close, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Take it away.
Think about the last time your own community experienced a profound moment of shared clarity or vision. What was the exact mechanism, if any, that was put in place the very next morning to ensure that clarity survived the next 5 years of routine and fatigue?
Thank you for spending time with me. If this conversation moves something in you, share it with someone doing the work alongside you. I'm Damian Curd, still operating on the oldest theology in the room. Love thy neighbor. Until we meet again, stay rooted, my friends.